When Emma moved into the old house on Maple Street, she was thrilled. It was the kind of place that felt like it had character, creaky floors, vintage wallpaper, and the kind of charm that came with being old. It felt like the perfect place to start, fresh after a difficult few months. But there was one thing that bothered her, something she couldn't shake off no matter how hard she tried. It was the attic. The house was big, and the attic was located on the third floor, up a narrow, steep staircase. The door to the attic was heavy and thick, painted a dull gray. It wasn't like the rest of the house, which was inviting and warm. Every time she walked past it, she couldn't help but feel a strange, unsettling pull toward it. The kind of pull that makes you want to ignore it, but also not be able to look away. One evening, after a long day of unpacking boxes and setting up her new home, Emma decided she'd had enough. The attic door stared at her from the hallway, and she had to face it. She was tired of avoiding it, tired of the nagging feeling that it was watching her. She grabbed a flashlight and made her way up the stairs. The door creaked open, and a wave of musty, stale air hit her. The attic smelled of dust, old wood, and something faintly metallic. It wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't exactly welcoming either. The room was filled with boxes, old furniture covered in sheets, and forgotten relics of the house's past. But in the far corner, a dark shape caught her eye. There, sitting underneath a thick, dusty cloth, was something large, something that didn't belong. Curiosity bubbled inside her, but there was also a strange sense of foreboding. Emma couldn't resist. She slowly approached the object, her footsteps echoing in the quiet attic. With a shaking hand, she reached out and pulled the cloth away. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. It was a mirror. An antique mirror with an ornate golden frame that looked out of place in the otherwise dusty, neglected attic. The glass was fogged over with age, but Emma could still make out the faint reflection of herself standing in front of it. She stared at her reflection for a moment, expecting to see nothing more than a tired, slightly disheveled version of herself. But there was something wrong. The reflection wasn't exactly hers. In the mirror, the figure that stood in her place seemed darker, its edges blurred like smoke. And standing right behind her was another figure, a shadowy silhouette that had no business being there. It was tall, lanky, with broad shoulders, and though it had no face, she could feel its eyes on her. She turned quickly, expecting to find someone behind her, but there was no one. Her breath quickened, her heart thumping in her chest. The figure in the mirror hadn't moved. It stood completely still, staring at her. The longer she looked, the more the figure seemed to take form. It was as if it was slowly becoming more real, its features sharp yet shadowed, as if trying to hide in the dim light of the attic. Suddenly, the figure's head tilted, as if it were studying her. Emma's mouth went dry. The air around her grew thick, colder, and then it smiled. The grin stretched unnaturally wide, too wide to be real, its mouth filled with jagged, sharp teeth. Emma gasped, stepping backward. Her reflection never moved, but the figure in the mirror, it grinned at her, its eyes now hollow black voids. Then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, the figure spoke. "Maggie, leave now." Emma stumbled back, a cold sweat breaking out across her skin. The voice was soft, but it echoed through the attic, bouncing off the walls. She turned quickly to look behind her again, but the attic was empty. There was no one there. She turned back to the mirror, her breath shallow. The figure's lips curled into a larger, more sinister grin. "Maggie, leave. It will come for you." Emma's pulse raced. "My name is Emma," she whispered, almost as if she were trying to convince herself. "I'm not Maggie." But the reflection didn't seem to care. It kept smiling, kept watching, its dark, empty eyes locked onto hers. Terrified, Emma backed away from the mirror, her mind racing. She didn't know what to do. She turned to leave, but when she reached for the attic door, the whispers came again. louder this time, like a chorus of voices, all speaking at once, all chanting her name. Maggie, Maggie, Emma. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the voices, trying to hold on to her sanity. She ran down the stairs, not even looking back. The house felt alive, as if it was breathing along with her. But it wasn't over. That night, Emma tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't quiet. She couldn't shake the image of the figure in the mirror, its grin still haunting her thoughts. She lay awake, her heart racing, listening to the silence of the house. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside seemed amplified in the darkness. And then she heard it. A sound, soft at first, like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the house. It was coming from above, from the attic. Terrified, Emma pulled the covers over her head, but the footsteps continued. The floorboards creaked, and she could hear something moving up there. She tried to tell herself it was just the house settling, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. It was the figure. It was coming. When the morning light finally filtered through the windows, Emma gathered her courage and went downstairs to make coffee. But when she reached the hallway, her blood ran cold. The mirror was no longer in the attic. It was in the hallway, right outside her bedroom door. And the figure was no longer standing still. It was moving. It was walking toward her. The whispers filled the house once again, growing louder, frantic, as if the figure was no longer in the mirror, but now in the very walls of the house. Emma could hear it breathing. It was in the air, in the shadows, and it was coming for her. The figure stopped. Its eyes locked onto hers from the reflection. It smiled. But this time, Emma saw the truth. The figure wasn't just in the mirror. The mirror was the gateway, and it was coming out.